As you know, all classes in Dofus can now be built in all 4 elements. Have you ever wondered what your favorite class might play like as a strength build instead of a chance build? Well, that's exactly what we're going to try to figure out today for the Sadida class. The gist of this video is to give you an idea of how the Sadida will play in all 4 elements for PvM content. If you could do me a huge favor and just smack that like button for me, it would really help the channel out. And if you're new here and you like Dofus PvM tips, guides, and gameplay, well, that's what my channel is all about. Consider hitting that subscribe button and turning on notifications so you know exactly when my videos go live. All right, let's do this. So what is the Sadida class? Well, Enkama has the Sadida listed as a summoner, a debuffer, and a healer. If we take a look at the Find Out More, you can also see they have some protector abilities as well as damage dealer, and we're going to cover all this stuff here in a minute. One thing I will point out, even though Positioner is not a strong suit at all for the Sadida class, they do have an incredible ability to block enemies and change the flow of a map. Alright, some general information about the Sadida spells. Most of the Sadida spells are mid to long range, with several of these, as you scroll down the list, you will see are range modifiable. Even some of their spells that have a shorter range, although they go through the effect of a tree which has a very long range, it creates the illusion of those things also having long range capabilities. Not just the trees, but the infected state that the Sadida class has the ability to use also creates this long range capability, even if a spell has a fairly short range on it. The infected state is something unique just to the Sadida class, and the way that works is once an enemy becomes infected, if the Sadida attacks that enemy, it will also be hitting all the other enemies that are in the infected state no matter where they are on the map. You literally could hit every enemy on the map if they're all infected, making it a very powerful ability of the Sadida. There's a few different ways that you can put the infected state on an enemy. The most common, probably with the Mad Doll. It's a doll that you're going to summon out there, and it can cast the infected state on up to 2 enemies every turn. Another popular way is you throw a tree out there. Once it turns into a leafy tree, you can use this proximity poison, and this is going to create the infected state around every one of those trees and possibly even other dolls that you might have running around out there also. One really nice thing to point out about this infected state also is it's applicable for all 4 elemental builds of the Sadida. So there's not one build that thrives better from this than the other. You can use infected state on all 4 elements. Alright, a lot of the debuffing and healing capabilities of the Sadida class comes from the support of their summons. So we're going to run through those real quick, and I'm going to tell you how they work. So this thing here called the block and a tree are both of the 2 things that you're going to use regularly to try to change the flow of a map, or maybe even block or corner enemies into little crevices of the map. The block, you throw it out there and it's literally going to just walk straight towards an enemy and then just stay there. So you can use it to clog a small path. You can do the same thing with a tree. The Mad Doll, as we covered just a moment ago, is one of your biggest ways of throwing the infected state on your enemies. However, they will also be trying to remove AP from your enemies. The Sacrificial Doll is your only direct damage summon, and it is agility based. However, the damage output of this summon is not dependent upon your characteristics. So even if you are a strength or a chance build, you can throw the Sacrificial Doll out there and it's going to do just as much damage as if you were agility, which is pretty nice. In fact, the Sacrificial Doll, the more turns it stays on the map before it blows itself up. Now trust me, it's trying to go blow itself up, so it's not easy to make it stay there long. But the longer it stays out there, the bigger the damages it will do once it does finally reach an enemy. The inflatable summon here is what you will use to heal your allies, and it will give you an MP buff. This one typically stays back and it does nice heals around the map. The cool thing about the inflatable also though, every leafy tree you've managed to put out there on the map, when this casts its healing spells, it will also do a heal around every one of those. So if you have some allies that are maybe all the way across from you and you can't get a heal on them, Stick these guys right next to a tree. When that inflatable does its thing, they'll get a heal as well. The last summon I'm going to point out here on the list is the ultra powerful, and trust me, this thing is very powerful. It's going to stay out there just like the Mad Doll, but what it's trying to do is remove MP, and it also removes the MP parry of your enemies, which is kind of like their ability to dodge MP. So the longer this stays out there, the easier it will get for your ultra powerful to remove MP from those enemies. All right, I'm going to come back to this tree summon here real quick because it's actually a very important piece of the Sadida as well, and you're going to use this in so many unique ways. One unique thing about the tree summon also is it does not follow the standard rules of a summon. It doesn't matter what your summon count is for your character, you can put as many trees out on the map as you want. Now, you can only cast one per turn, and you have to wait one turn before you can make it into a leafy tree, which is typically where you need it to be able to use it. However, if you throw a tree out there and then you put this teardrop on it, it will evolve it into a leafy tree right away. Nice thing about the tear, yeah, chance builds will get a nice benefit from it as an attack spell. But if all you're doing is using it to evolve a tree, it doesn't matter what element you're in, the tree will still evolve the exact same way. Another thing you can do with your tree once it's become a leafy tree is this Sylvian Power and the Vegetal Influence. These are ways you can transform that leafy tree into a controllable summon for one turn. You can use some push, some pull, there's an Unbewitch, I believe there's a heal that you can do. So this can be a handy little thing to help you in a situation, and it doesn't require any line of sight to be able to do it. So any tree you have out there, you can then use this on it. It just has to be in the leafy tree state before you cast it on there. And one other thing that I'll point out about those leafy trees, which I kind of hinted at already, you will have certain spells and summon abilities that will transfer through those trees. For example, this Earthquake, every leafy tree you have out there, when you use this spell, every leafy tree is going to actually use this spell. So if you've got 4 or 5 trees out there all spread out, you could be attacking the entire map with one spell because of all those trees you got out there. Alright, so generally speaking about the Sadida class, the role that they play is typically to stay back from the fight itself and do most of their engagements from a distance. Whether that's supporting the team, debuffing the enemies, or straight attacking, the goal is to stay back and do the fight from a distance. And this pretty much applies to all 4 elements. Now we're going to break that down a little bit in more detail here in just a moment, but that's kind of the general overview of the Sadida, at least in a PvM role. Scrolling down through all the spells that are available, both the primary and the alternative versions that begin to open up to you, there are a total of 4 agility spells, 5 chance spells, 6 strength spells, 4 intelligence spells, and then there is this one, well, it's technically 2 if you count both, a hybrid spell that is for intelligence and chance. Alright, so let's talk about the agility build first. Your biggest challenge right out of the gate with an agility build Sadida is the fact that the only spell that you have available until you get to level 145 is the Sacrificial Doll. And this is if you want to stay a pure build agility. You literally have no other agility attacks on that entire primary list. And this isn't even contingent upon what your agility is. So most likely you're going to be very heavily dependent upon weapons. Once you do reach 145, you get the Shake ability, which is a very strong agility attack. However, this is something that, just like the Earthquake, is used around all your leafy trees. So again, it's still not a direct damage attack. Your first one of those don't come until level 150, and it's a good one. It's an AoE, 1 to 8 range. It's a good solid spell. However, that's a long ways to wait before you have the ability to do some direct damage with your spells. That's going to be your biggest challenge with an agility Sadida right from the get-go. But don't worry, it's not all doom and gloom. They have the Inoculation, Contagion, and Paralyzing Bramble. All 3 of these have long range, 1 to 7 minimum. 2 of those are even range modifiable, so you can reach a long ways across the map on these. Another cool thing, unique only to the agility builds, is the Inoculation and Contagion both have the ability to do direct damage and apply the Infected State. None of the other builds have that ability, at least that I'm aware of. If I'm mistaken on that, please let me know in the comments below. But from what I can tell, that's the only build that gives you the option to do direct damage and apply the Infected State on your own. Also, 195, this spell that you get, Paralyzing Bramble, it's not a really high damage attack spell. However, it is the most direct MP removing damage spell of the Sadida because it has the benefit of being both range modifiable and it does not have to be cast in a straight line. You'll learn that with the Sadidas, there are several spells that can only be cast linear. This one is not held to that and it's range modifiable, giving you extreme flexibility on where you want to cast it. And one extra benefit you get, even though you're supposed to try to stay back and do your work from a distance, should you end up next to an enemy, the agility obviously will have the easiest chance of walking away and getting away from that bad situation. Alright, the biggest challenges I was able to find for the Chance build is the fact that out of all the elements, they do have the shortest range spells on the list. Some of these being 1 to 5, even this one being a 1 to 2 range. So they do have some short ranged attacks. Another thing is their AoE attacks, because the Sadida has a lot of AoE attacks. But in the Chance setup, they do have kind of the smallest of the AoE attacking abilities. And the last thing I'll point out as a struggle for a Chance build is your first Chance attack that you get is this tier, which is a fairly strong attack. The problem is it's only linear. But again, it's offset by the fact it does not, however, require line of sight. So if you've got yourself a nice little forest built up, the enemy can't get through it, you can still be hitting them on the other side. But the reason I bring that up as a struggle is because all your attacks are going to have to be linear until you get down here to level 50, when you get Dolly Sacrifice and can start to do some direct damage with your Chance build. Again, slightly shorter range, but it's got some really strong damage. One of the big strong suits of the Chance build though, they have the ability to steal health while doing great damage. Gets you closer to the fight, but you're going to also be sustaining your survivability by stealing that HP from the enemies you are walloping on. Also, if you decide to go with the Chance and you are into hybrid builds, if you want to go Chance and Intelligence, they do have a nice set of spells here available for an Intelligence Chance build hybrid. And the cool thing is this one does have long range and is range modifiable. So as a Chance build, that could be extremely valuable to you for getting some extra distance in there with another spell. One last thing I'll point out for Chance build, because we all know it, you also get more loot. And why would we not want more loot? Beef up that prospecting, people. Okay, strength build. Well, the biggest challenge that I was able to find here from the strength build is, aside from this first spell right here, Bramble, your next 3 strength spells all are cast in a straight line. Manifold Bramble, Aggressive Bramble, and Poisoned Undergrowth, if you give up your Bramble, all require straight line casting. So that's going to be a bit of a hindrance for you if you're looking for some flexibility. I probably would not give up the Bramble until you've worked your way down a little further and you've gotten some of these other spells that might be available to you that do not require just straight line attacks. But luckily, like I said, Bramble, which is the first spell you get, is not in a straight line. It's 1 to 8 and it's modifiable range. And it's got a decent damage right there from the get-go too. So it's a solid build, but you're gonna have to know that almost everything you get after this, you're gonna be shooting in a straight line. Another big plus for the strength build, this Manifold Bramble, it actually has the largest AoE attack ability of the Sadida class. Yeah, who cares when you're casting in a straight line when you got an AoE like that? So that's a really big plus for the strength build also. A couple other things I'll point out here about the strength build. If you're willing to give up Bramble, you have this passive poison ability that you can begin to tap into to try to get some extra damage on your enemies. And with the aggressive Bramble, you also have access to the highest damage output spell of the Sadida class as well. It may be in a straight line and it may not have an AoE, but the enemy that you hit, it's gonna hurt. All in all, when it comes to the strength build, yes, they do have capabilities of removing MP from enemies. They have abilities to buff their MP while doing attacks. But I would say that the big strength of the strength build is the damage potential that you're shooting for. And last but not least, with the intelligence build. I would say the biggest challenge you're going to run into with the intelligence build, I feel like it's in that sweet spot between all three other elements. Some people will find that great because it can dabble in a little bit of everything. Other people might see it as holding it back because it's not excelling at any specific thing. But it does have some strengths that we're going to get into as we go down this list. First thing that I'll point out is the obvious, the healing abilities. All the Sadida builds have some healing abilities using the tree of life and things like that. However, the intelligence build will get the biggest bang for their buck when it comes to the capabilities of healing, especially with a spell here like Soothing Bramble. It can only be cast in a straight line. I told you, there's lots of straight line cast, but look at that, 61 to 65 health restored. That's a big heal. With a big intelligence Sadida, you can really maximize that on some people. This Earthquake spell is also one that you'll use a lot because, again, it's going to utilize those leafy trees that you've planted all around the place. It's going to pull a bunch of people in. It's going to do a lot of damage. And the cool thing too about the Earthquake spell is it also reveals any enemies that have turned invisible. So some of those areas where the enemies like to disappear on you and stay gone for long periods of time, get yourself a handful of leafy trees out there, cast Earthquake, shake the whole map, and pop, they just come right back out. And for the intelligence build Sadida, I feel like they have a nice variety of direct damage, indirect damage, AoE damage. This Wild Grass is a really good damage spell. Also, it's going to be removing MP from your enemies, straight line only, but it's range modifiable. They're a very well balanced element if you're looking for something that can do a little bit of just about everything. But what they can't do is they can't steal HP directly like the Chance build. They can't cast Infected State while doing damage like the Agility build. So they do have some limitations compared to the others, but they're a very well balanced, solid class. I would say from a damage output point, they're probably not quite as strong as the strength, but they're definitely really close in that capability. And then, like I mentioned before, these two spells here become very viable and usable for the Chance and Intelligence build if you decide you want to go that hybrid route. Again, if I missed anything that you think is really important to point out about the Sadida in any of the particular elements, please leave it in the comments below so I can see it, other people can see it, and we can all learn from that. I would really appreciate your feedback. Okay, so here's my final thoughts. This is what I would say to somebody if they asked me which element should I go in, and I would present you with this information. It's nice to know up front that no matter which build you go with, all the Sadidas have the ability to remove AP and MP from your enemies. All the Sadida builds have the ability to provide some healing capabilities. All the Sadidas can also utilize all the summons that they have, which I think is very unique to the Sadida class. And they all have the ability to change the flow of a map or to block enemies into corners and things like that, which I think is a big plus for all Sadidas. So which build is right for you? Well, here's what I would say. If you're brand new to Dofus, you don't know what you're doing, and you still need to learn the game, I would either go with a strength build or an intelligence build. They both pump out solid damage. They're very straightforward to learn. They're not too complicated. I would go strength if your priority is to do more damage, and I would go intelligence if you want something that's a little more rounded, maybe not pump out quite as much damage, but you want that survivability of the fact that you can heal, and you're going to maybe be running with teams, and you want to be able to help the rest of the team out. I would go one of those two routes if you're brand new. If you're familiar with the game of Dofus and you just want to try the Sadida class out, I would say strength, intelligence, and the Chance are all viable builds. I feel like if you understand the game, those three elements are not going to throw any really big, crazy curveballs at you. Just know that up front, Chance is probably going to keep your Sadida closer to the fight than any of the other elements, which maybe that's what you would like. You're also going to have that survivability of being able to steal health while you're doing damage, which is a big plus, and you've got a really nice high damage attack you can do that requires no line of sight, which are all big perks for a Chance-based Sadida. I would say if I was running solo, I would probably try a Chance build just because I think they're fun, they're creative, and that survivability of being able to steal health is probably pretty nice. And do I need to remind you, more loot? But if what you're looking for is just the biggest challenge you can get out of the Sadida class, you're strictly going for fun factor and you don't know what you're in store for, well, I would say give that agility build a shot. Seeing as your main attack is going to be nothing other than whatever weapon you pick up and that sacrificial doll until you get over 140 at a minimum, well, I think that's going to be a very challenging build for you. Most likely what I would recommend is build yourself up to, that 140 140, 150 mark using one of the other elements, and then reset and switch over to agility at that point, because I got a feeling the grind to get there is going to get really old really fast trying to be pure agility all the way up. Well, if you'd like to see more class summary type videos like this, do me a favor and let me know in the comments below. And don't just say yes, also let me know what class you would like to see summarized like this. That would really help me figure out which way to maybe go with the next one. And if you could do me a huge favor, if you haven't already, and smack that like button for me, it would really help me out. I appreciate that. And if you like Dofus PvM tips, guides, and gameplay, well, that's what my channel is here for. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you know exactly when those videos go live. Until next time, you all be safe out there, and I will see you on the next one.